Hello, 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 folks. Welcome back. Welcome back. We are making a foundational shift here today. Welcome to You Are Not Broken, the Phases of Healing subscription. We are aligned now. We are You Are Not Broken everywhere on Substack, on Spotify, on YouTube. And I'm doing something a little funny today. Yes, I am. I am showing up as a little puppy dog, if those of you who are viewing this. And we're just shaking it up a little bit because we are talking about women and men today. And me coming as a very male identifying puppy dog, I thought would just be interesting for the subject matter that we're talking about, which is I don't know what it's like to be you. Trauma, women, men, and the brain body conversation that's missing in most relationships. We are addressing our traumas in droves, and suddenly relationships past and present don't make as much brain body safety sense as they used to. But were any of us wired the same to begin with? Now, before we begin, I want to welcome you. Over the past several years, I've watched something quietly come together. What began as my own healing journey has evolved into a larger initiative centered around a simple truth: you are not broken. Today, that truth lives in many places: the You Are Not Broken book, the healing programs, the subscription, the podcast, and the conversations we have together. These are not separate offerings, they are all entry points into the same path. Welcome to You Are Not Broken, the Phases of Healing subscription. Everything is in alignment, and we've moved on from calling this holding space subscription with intention. The space now is everywhere. You coming here are claiming it. You are taking up space to be present in your healing. So hello, this is organized healing. This is the trailhead. If you choose to engage with this work, I will help you stay on the path. I take that responsibility seriously. I take good care of people here. You will feel that. The links here are invitations. You are already inside a special place. Enjoy belonging. It's a wound closing when you are held in community and you are here. So enter the trailhead through the button, the link, enter the Phases of Healing program if you like, and let's keep going. What we are about to explore together will likely land somewhere deeper than thought alone. It may feel less like learning something new and more like uncovering something you have always known, something almost archaeological, as though you dug through layers of your own experience and discovered that the truth about connection had been waiting there all along. I suspect this conversation will make sense in more than one place. It will make sense intellectually. It will make sense somatically in your body. It will make sense neurologically in the wiring of your brain and nervous system. I'm going to state it plainly. Our connection to our lives is misled. This misdirection has led to a disconnection epidemic that links to partnership. This disconnection is a mirror to why partnership as we know it also needs to make a huge shift. Most of us spend our lives accumulating what we believe will finally satisfy us. Here's a list: achievement, work, success, security, belonging, partnership, children, homes, possessions. Yet underneath all of it remains a quieter longing, a longing for a deeper inner wisdom, a longing for a nurturing presence, a longing for a protective presence, and a longing for a peaceful presence. The restoration of those capacities often begins through conversations like this one. This will unfold slowly, safely, and with pacing. Most importantly, it will be with nervous system awareness, with authenticity, and with truth. So before we go further, I'd like to invite you into the conversation. Place a hand on your lower rib cage. Take a breath. Now breathe into your back body. Come here with all of yourself, not just your thoughts, not just your opinions, not just your conclusions. I invite you to bring all 360 degrees of your awareness, because this is the truth. Every person you encounter in life is different from you. Partnership is an agreement towards permanent curiosity about that difference. Curiosity requires a willingness to build a toolbox and use it. Repair builds partnership. The work is a positive feedback loop. The reward is not quantifiable, it is foundational. So let's go on that. Every person you encounter in life is different from you. They are wired differently. They possess different capacities. They have different histories, different nervous systems, different adaptations, and different ways of pursuing safety. One of the greatest limitations of the human mind is its tendency to simplify this complexity. We label, we categorize, we decide. We say someone is a good person or a bad person. We talk about a healthy partner or a toxic one. We ask, are they safe or unsafe? These interpretations help us make quick choices, but they do not necessarily help us understand. And understanding is where healing begins. The truth is that emotional processing does not happen exclusively in the mind. Much of it happens within the body and nervous system. We often believe we can think our way into understanding another person. We cannot. We cannot figure someone out. We can only invite them to know us from the depth at which we know ourselves. This has always been the heart of my work, helping people develop tools that access deeper forms of intelligence. These forms are emotional intelligence, somatic intelligence, neurobiological intelligence. To do that, we need tools for processing emotion, understanding the body's experience, and working with the sensory systems that shape our experience of safety. Each of us organizes safety differently, and many of us are attempting to navigate life with entire systems partially offline. When that happens, we tend to over-rely on the mind. We analyze, we explain, we interpret, we attempt to solve. Meanwhile, the body continues carrying information the mind cannot fully access alone. And nowhere is this disconnect more evident than in our closest relationships. But let me just say how this is not exactly a we yet. There is no we yet because most of us are still relating through protective strategies, unhealed wounds, neurological differences we don't understand, and nervous systems that have never learned how to truly see one another. Before we talk about men and women, trauma, neurological differences, attachment styles, or why so many relationships seem to fracture under pressure, I want to acknowledge something uncomfortable. There is no we yet, not collectively. We have not yet reached a place where most people understand the transformational power of a relational mirror. We are still largely approaching relationships through protection rather than healing. People are breaking up everywhere, some through divorce, some before marriage, some while technically staying together but slowly disconnecting through years of unmet needs, misunderstandings, and old wounds. Forget about dating today. Everyone is learning more from walking away. An expansion is happening after the worst heartache, betrayal, trauma bond, or dating the wrong person. What I see as a trauma therapist is that many dating or marriage partnerships today are struggling in new ways. They begin to struggle the moment one person starts healing. Someone enters therapy, starts examining old patterns, begins recognizing trauma responses, and suddenly the relationship feels upside down. What looked stable was often organized around adaptation rather than healing. The entry into therapy for trauma is a shift on a neurological level, and sometimes it's happening without the necessary resourcing stage that can begin inside therapy, but takes time even inside that environment. Resurfacing wounds is not what many partners specialize in, and yet it's happening regardless. The difference between the couples who repair when one partner enters healing and the other feels betrayed by something unidentifiable, and the couples who separate is rarely who is right about what is happening. More often, it comes down to whether both people can recognize that they need tools. Because mental health has always been primarily about tool acquisition. A diagnosis may be a tool. Attachment theory may be a tool. Love languages may be a tool. Spirituality may be a tool. None of these exist to tell you what is wrong with you. They exist to help you understand how you learn to survive, connect, protect yourself, and love. Together, they form a toolbox. The problem is that we don't all have equal access to these tools, nor are we all standing in the same phase of healing. Some people are years into understanding themselves, others don't yet know where the trailhead is. Until we recognize this, we continue choosing partners through our unhealed patterns, and then become surprised when those same patterns emerge inside the relationship. Partnership is not evidence that healing is complete. More often, partnership is the place where healing becomes impossible to avoid. Every relationship becomes a mirror. And when we look into a mirror, the challenge is not to fix the reflection. The challenge is to remain present long enough to learn from what we see. This is where the conversation about men, women, trauma, and the brain and body truly begins. Because before we can understand each other, we have to understand the protective systems we are bringing into the room. So, what about this brain body conversation most relationships have never had? When people talk about relationship differences, they often talk about men and women as though they are different species. I don't think that's quite right. What I see more often is a difference in how people attempt to create safety. This strategy is neurological. Many are offline to our neurosomatic intelligence, so it's not in our strategy switchboard. We rely on what we know, quote, know, and that comes right out our mouths through communication. But it is also having to do with what side of the brain orients you most to speaking. One person reaches towards certainty. They want clarity, answers, explanations, solutions. When conflict occurs, they begin drilling into the problem, trying to penetrate the confusion and arrive at understanding. That is the left brain. The other reaches towards connection. They want space to process, feel, explore, and make meaning. They act more like a portal through which experiences, emotions, memories, and relationships move in order to become integrated. This is the right brain. Neither is wrong. Both are attempting to arrive at safety. The problem is that trauma changes how these capacities operate. Many women have begun gaining language for the small and large traumas they carry in their bodies. They are becoming more aware of the ways they abandoned themselves, suppressed their needs, overfunctioned, tolerated disconnection, or learned to prioritize survival over authenticity. As they heal, something begins to shift. What can look chaotic from the outside is often a profound neurological reorganization from the inside. They become less interested in performing partnership and more interested in experiencing it. They begin wanting relationships that support healing rather than merely stability. This phenomenon is not limited to women. Across genders, more people are reclaiming their capacity to feel, process, and trust their own internal experience. At the same time, many men are beginning to encounter a different challenge. For generations, emotional suppression has been mistaken for strength. The ability to continue functioning despite loss, fear, grief, or loneliness has often been rewarded rather than examined. As a result, many men arrive in therapy not describing trauma, but describing confusion. These are some quotes I hear. It doesn't make sense. Everything was fine. I don't understand what happened. I feel disrespected. I feel like I've lost everything. Beneath those statements is often a person searching for reconnection while lacking a map for the emotional terrain they are standing in. They may seek answers because answers feel actionable. They may seek certainty because certainty feels safe. But underneath the search for explanation is frequently the same longing their partner has to feel seen, understood, and connected. This is where many couples become trapped. One partner is asking for deeper connection, the other is asking for reassurance. One partner is trying to describe an internal reality, the other is trying to solve an external problem. Both are speaking about safety, but they are speaking different languages. The brain is having one conversation, the body is having another. Until both conversations are welcomed into the relationship, neither partner feels fully understood. So, what is the bridge between worlds? Well, I've worked with couples, individuals, and moved back and forth in a hybrid fashion for different cases. In many instances, they watch the same scenario and have entirely different interpretations. I normalize this from the start. This is not what therapy is going to change. What it can do is create a bridge between the two worlds that you want to do the work to travel over. Eventually, the work is not work and is a new neural pathway for each partner, one they see as their own personal growth. Recently, I found myself attuning to a pattern. Couples, no matter how they are configured, broken up, married, same sex, or even singles, talking about the past, seem to be having an entirely different conversation despite using the same words. In the healing program, we help them equalize their polarity and take the same modules. This allows them to move into the next phase with the same knowledge, but a separate learning process depending on how they are previously imprinted on. Let's look at a healing program couple in their discovery phase. And once again, the link to the program is embedded in the post. So let's look at Sharon. Sharon's main complaint about her relationship is carrying an experience that she had to be the one to give more, explain more, or do more to continue to make the relationship work. She realized this doesn't work for her. She realized she was done doing this pattern overall in many areas and needed to give herself permission to stop, but she couldn't. She felt everything would fall apart. She would say, I just need someone to understand what it felt like to have to give more at that point. She would be certain she was providing background details for how she anticipates her partner's needs all day long, even when they are not around, and is triggered when they can't do the same. The partner would immediately begin offering possibilities. Well, maybe I didn't mean to come off that way. Did you ask me directly? Because if you're direct, I can do it. Have you considered that I was tired and wasn't really at my best? Both would leave feeling frustrated. She felt unseen, and her partner felt unsuccessful and picked apart. At first glance, it appeared to be a communication problem, but underneath it was something much more interesting. The human brain is divided into two hemispheres connected by a structure called the corpus callosum, a thick bundle of nerve fibers, really, that allow information to travel between the left and the right side of the brain. In many ways, it acts as a bridge between logic and emotion, analysis and intuition, language and lived experience. While every brain is unique, research suggests that some people naturally move fluidly between these domains, while others rely more heavily on one style of processing during moments of stress. What often gets described as male or female communication difference may actually be a difference in access to integration. One partner may be experiencing the conversation primarily through feeling. The other may be experiencing it primarily through problem solving. Both are intelligent, both care. Both are trying to create safety. They are simply entering the same room through different doors. We don't feel like we are in the same room together, however. If there is a bridge, we feel perched on it precariously and not like it is one to cross over. And trauma complicates this bridge. When the nervous system has learned that emotions are dangerous, overwhelming, or unsupported, access between thinking and feeling can become disrupted. A person may become highly analytical while losing touch with emotional awareness. Another may become flooded by emotional experience while struggling to organize thoughts into language. Neither response reflects weakness. Both represent adaptations that once served survival. This is also why broad assumptions about men and women often fall apart in therapy. Trauma, attachment history, culture, neurodivergence, and identity all shape how people process experience. Trauma, how it affects us neurobiologically, is essentially stress, and all brains have their nuances with this process, firing danger cues that don't speak truth outside the mind's interpretation and are just information. When we miss out on tool acquisition, this complicates crossing the bridge. An autistic partner, for example, may communicate in ways that prioritize precision, clarity, and direct information, while still possessing profound emotional depth. A partner with ADHD may experience emotions intensely and process them through movement, storytelling, or associative thinking. Someone recovering from complex trauma may constantly scan for relational cues, while another person with a similar history may rely on emotional distancing. Likewise, same-sex and gender-diverse couples frequently reveal something important that heterosexual relationships stereotypes miss. So when you remove traditional gender expectations, the underlying nervous system dynamic becomes easier to see. One partner may move toward certainty, one may move toward connection. One may need space, one may need reassurance. One may intellectualize, one may emotionalize. The roles shift, the people change, the nervous system patterns remain remarkably familiar. What matters is not gender. What matters is whether each person's way of creating safety has enough room to exist without becoming the enemy of the other person's. The healthiest relationships are often not those where partners think alike. The ones They are the ones where both people become curious about that bridge that exists between them, because connection is rarely found in convincing another person to stand where we stand. It's found by learning how to cross. So I thought maybe we'll look at a case example. I'm calling it safety versus responsibility. And we're looking at David and Sarah here. David and Sarah came into therapy convinced they had a communication problem. Sarah would spend 10 minutes describing how she feels very complex inside, but feels she gets to the bottom of it well due to her need to come to terms with childhood sexual trauma, teaching her the tools for processing her emotions. By the end, she was often in tears, stating she has to hold so much around him and is starting to feel like if he always needs me to explain my triggers to him, it's going to make me feel so alone. David would listen carefully and then respond, "Okay, so what do you want me to do about it?" Sarah would immediately feel hurt. "You're not hearing me." David would feel equally frustrated. "I listened to everything you said." To Sarah, understanding meant entering the emotional experience. To David, understanding meant helping solve what caused the distress. Both believed they were connecting. Both felt alone. It was not until the healing program, therapy, and coaching pointed out to them in individual sessions that one was wired to process connection for emotional safety, and the other was wired to process responsibility and expect connection. The approaches to connection for Sarah were based on a history of having to attune outward, pick up on everyone's feelings, and then create a mental, logical structure out of it all by herself. This was her expectation of her partner subconsciously. For David, his history was to create a buffer from the emotional needs of others, attune only to the responsibilities he could learn made his gender appropriate or correct somehow out in the world. He felt he was not always the best at his male responsibilities and was willing to do better, but could never figure out how in her eyes. From a neurological perspective, they were processing the same situation differently. Sarah's brain appeared to move rapidly between emotional, relational, autobiographical, and sensory information. David tended to organize information through logic, sequencing, and problem solving. She experienced connection through shared meaning. He experienced connection through practical support. Neither approach was wrong. The conflict emerged because each assumed the other's nervous system worked similarly. As therapy progressed, another layer emerged. Sarah had a history of developmental trauma. Throughout childhood, she learned to suppress her needs to preserve relationships. As she began healing, emotions she had disconnected from started coming online. What David experienced as overthinking was her brain attempting to integrate years of unprocessed emotional information. David, meanwhile, had learned that emotions were solved through action. Growing up, vulnerability was often met with discomfort or dismissal. His nervous system learned to move quickly towards solutions because solutions created a sense of control and safety. The more Sarah sought understanding, the more David offered solutions. The more David offered solutions, the more Sarah felt unseen. The more unseen she felt, the more detailed her explanations became. The more detailed her explanations became, the more overwhelmed David felt. Neither partner was creating the distance intentionally. Their nervous systems were the breakthrough that their nervous systems really were. So the breakthrough occurred when David learned that listening itself could be an act of protection and connection, while Sarah learned that David's desire to solve problems was often an expression of care rather than avoidance. For the first time, neither person was trying to change the other. They were learning to translate. So that's our case example, and expanding now beyond gender. And really what's important is that this dynamic is not exclusive to heterosexual couples. I have seen nearly identical patterns in same-sex couples, neurodivergent couples, and gender-diverse relationships. For example, in one relationship between two women, one partner processed primarily through emotional exploration while the other preferred structure, planning, and concrete action. The dynamic looked remarkably similar to David and Sarah, despite neither partner being male. Likewise, an autistic partner may seek clarity and direct communication, not because they lack emotional depth, but because predictability helps regulate the nervous system. An ADHD partner may move fluidly between emotions, memories, sensations, and ideas, creating a communication style that feels interconnected but difficult for their partner to follow. Trauma adds yet another layer. When the nervous system has been shaped by chronic stress, attachment injury, neglect, or abuse, the bridge between thinking and feeling can become disrupted. Some people become highly emotional and struggle to organize their experience. Others become highly analytical and lose access to emotional awareness. Many move back and forth between both states. The question is rarely, is this a male brain or a female brain? The more helpful question is, how has this person's nervous system learned to create safety? Because once couples understand that they are not arguing with each other so much as speaking from different survival languages, compassion often enters where judgment once lived. And compassion is frequently the first plank laid on the bridge between two very different worlds. So, lastly, folks, no one article or post. No one article or post can say it all about this subject matter. Message me about what you'd like to hear more on. And head to the healing program for your first step if you're curious about the monthly membership, a series of modules that could start your transformation from the bottom up rather than a lot of talking. What I have found is the transformation process is the reverse of what we thought. Learn how inside the Toolbox Approach to Healing Trailhead course. So my suggestion is that you start the modules at $45 a month and gain access to all the extras offered in addition to the course. Start digesting this in a weekly program with yourself, or watching 30 minutes a week, or listening as you walk around and do stuff. 30 minutes a week will only take 3 weeks. Or you can do this more quickly. It's up to you. When you are ready, message me inside the program with any questions, and we can prepare you for your therapy and coaching. The program is tailored to you at that point for $340 a month, and that's 2 80-minute sessions bi-weekly. And it's a lot of support. It's going to blow your mind, guys. I hope to see you there. Subscribe or share. You never know who this could make a difference for. And heal on, everyone.